Thank you for listening today on Revealing Wholeness, sponsored by Infinity Whole Health. Check out our website at infinityWholeHealth.com, where we are revealing the eternal in each individual, the infinite in the individual. The creativity is made manifest. Limitation is let go. Now, here's your host, Dr. Troy Munson.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Troy Munson on Revealing Wholeness. And, there's so much stuff going on in our food these days, and the chemicals and everything that they're doing to it, the processing, it's reaching almost a fever pitch. And so today is on food chemicals and toxicity, and really, what do we do about it? What can we do about it? What's our power? What should we worry about? What should we not? And if you know me long enough and you've been around my podcasts enough, you're probably going to know that I'm going to say, well, don't worry at all. But we still want to do our due diligence to say, okay, well, let's pick and choose maybe a little bit better about how we go about our food. Now, if you're out there eating fast food in restaurants all the time and eating box canned food, you're probably not listening to this podcast. But if you are, then just know that you're probably going to be surprised, or rather not shocked, when I say that's probably not what you want to be eating. But with that said, let's talk about a little bit of maybe the history of chemicals. I'm sure there were chemicals way back added to food, but they weren't many. And when I say way back, that's like thousands of years. But as we hit the Industrial Revolution and chemicals started coming out, even in the mid-1800s, we have this new thought coming out that the medical profession said, hey, I bet that I could make more money selling drugs than I could off my oil cartels. And that was Mr. Rockefeller who said that. And he wasn't even a doctor. And so he started investing in drug companies and making drugs, and he literally proved it correct. He made way more money selling drugs than he did selling oil. And how did he do it? Well, he's the one that actually formed the AMA, the American Medical Association. And he, with the help of two doctors that didn't even have licenses, we don't even think they were actually doctors. He just called them doctors, and they would go around and promote it. And so he created this American Medical Association so he could get all doctors organized selling his drugs. And so, not to mention now that we've got drugs pushing the forefront, we also have in society that there are now these chemicals being added to our food. And so we had some really well-meaning doctors that were at the forefront of the fight against that. And I'm going to be doing a podcast on that. And those particular doctors were just really, really integral into trying to keep that stuff out as long as we could. So the doctor in question was a Dr. Harvey Wiley, and he was so adamant against any kind of processing and food stuff that they said on his deathbed that it was one of the saddest days for food in general, because they didn't have this man who was so passionate to fight these things. And so they got together and they created the FDA after he passed. And they had a gentleman on the FDA for about 6 months, if I'm not mistaken. But again, we're going to do a podcast on that as well, the history of the FDA. We're talking about what happened to the FDA within just a very short period of time, that the food companies did not want anybody against food processing at the head of the FDA. And that was the first thing they did, was get him out of there so that they could keep processing food and try to improve shelf life, which was really for a monetary increase. They were mostly concerned about making money, not about your health, not about doing right by you, the public, but simply by their pocketbook. And so it's not very hard to believe that even now it's getting worse, because here we're over 100 years of FDA, and it's laughable what they do at this point. I think it's crazy. And so the history of chemicalizing our foods is incredible. And if you've heard some other podcasts, one of my favorite ones to point out is that sugar, regular glucose and sucrose that we see in so many products, and this is not even talking high fructose corn syrup. This is talking straight glucose. When you see glucose in ingredients or sucrose, you're looking at a synthetic sugar they actually manufactured in a lab. Real sugar is dextrose, and so that's the real stuff. And so you rarely see that in anything. You might see like organic cane sugar. That's fine. They're not going to say dextrose because they know you're not going to understand possibly what dextrose even means. So they're going to use where they're getting it and that it is organic or natural, which is awesome. I appreciate that they do that, because who wants to try to figure out what every chemical name is? I certainly don't. You certainly don't. I know a lot of them just because I study this stuff, but you know what? I really don't want to know any more than I have to. Just tell me that it's all natural and be genuine about it. That would really be nice. And so now we have all these chemicals flowing into our food that are preservatives, dyes to make it look better, all these different things. But now we have to combat things like glyphosate, Roundup, that they're spraying on wheat after it's already picked. They're spraying it on wheat to drive water out to make it cheaper for shipping so they can ship more. And so now we've got all this glyphosate on all wheat products, bread products, donuts, everything. And here it is just going into our body. And does everybody have a liver? Yes, they do. Do animals have livers? Yes, they do. And this is something that I'll point out to folks. I'm not a big, I must be organic, must be certified organic. I'm not that big of a proponent on organic. I am, though, when it comes to animal products, dairy products, meat, that it be grass-fed. Well, yeah, but it's not organic. That's true, but at least if I have whole nutrients and grass going into a cow that I'm going to eat, I know that it has a liver, and it can detoxify the chemicals that are on the grass. It can get rid of it. But if it's being grain-fed and the grain is now got glyphosate on it directly, it's barley, it's wheat, it's whatever it is, it's corn, it's garbage, it's genetically modified corn. I mean, come on, at least they're not genetically modifying the grass, I hope. But if they're feeding hay and grass to a cow, and that's how they're pasteurizing it, and then I go ahead and buy the meat, the cow can detoxify the majority of its fat and on whatever on the grass. Maybe it lives just in a weird area and the clouds come in and they have a lot of chemicals from a neighboring city, and so it's raining acid rain or chemicals on the grass. Well, you know what? That's why a cow has a liver, and it's going to clean the majority of it. And so let's say it doesn't do all of it and there's some in the meat. Well, guess what? I have a liver and I take care of my liver, and I would rather have the good omega-3 fats from the grass-fed cow and deal with a little bit of chemicals in the meat that might actually be left over than have a certified organic animal that's being grain-fed and now it's just omega-3 fats that I don't need. So that's the difference when it comes to how chemicals work. So you might say, well, yeah, but an organic cow that's grain-fed, at least it's organic. Well, yes, you could say at least it's organic. It has no chemicals going into you. But at this point, it's not eating its natural environment. The fats that are being developed in that animal are actually not what we need. We need omega-3 fats that a grass-fed animal or an elk or deer that eats at natural habitat actually have. So now that's a different type of chemical exposure, if you will, or toxicity, that now we're getting way too much omega-6 fats instead of omega-3 fats. So that's why, every food in its most raw, natural state becomes what we're really looking for. And if that happens to be certified organic, so be it. But as we look at that kind of stuff, I want to open our minds a bit more to realizing, okay, yes, there's a lot of chemicals out there. I'm going to remove them wherever possible. They've been there a long time. Right now in this room, I would imagine that we're breathing in at least 500 chemicals. Chemicals coming off the carpet, chemicals coming off my clothing, chemicals coming off this desk, off the microphone in front of me, the computer that's sitting here, the blood pressure cuff that's plastic. There's a towel sitting here. There is a basket sitting here. I'm sitting on a chair that's got veneer. There's a spine next to me that's plastic. I mean, who knows how many chemicals we're breathing in right now just in this tiny little room. But are we dying? No, but is there probably some magical number of where people start really passing away because of the amount of chemicals they're being exposed to? Probably is. So wherever you lessen that amount of chemicals is excellent. Wherever you increase your nutrient density in your food is excellent. So as you take care of yourself and you really support your liver function as best you can, you now are a detoxification machine. And so you're able to live in a much more vibrant, much more vital, much more energetic way than somebody who's eating out all the time and is exposed to all these things, and they're not limiting it and they just don't care, but they feel like more and more garbage. And they wonder why body parts are going wrong and why blood pressure is no longer good and why they're on medications now and they're just trying to piece their body together. Are all these chemicals going to shorten their life? Not necessarily. Listen to one of the podcasts I just did on Be Unsafe. That'll let you know how long you're going to live and can you change it. But suffice to say, it does affect the quality of our life, possibly. And so designations of cleanliness in food now become a bit important, like we talk about grass-fed as opposed to organic, or organic as opposed to organic, certified organic. And these are all designations that we're going to be watching come out, and there's going to be more and more designations that are going to be different. I don't mind the kosher designation. That tends to be a little bit cleaner food. They tend to realize, hey, I would like to not have so much adulterated chemicals in my food, so I think I'm going to go with kosher. There are different things we're going to watch starting to come out for us to start figuring out, where can I get less chemicals? How can I be exposed to less chemicals in my environment? And at this point, now we're gonna switch to the last phase that we want to talk about with chemicals and food and toxicity and what to do, and talk about detoxification. So what do we do to work with the liver? What do we do to make our kidneys work better? Well, the other day, my wife brings home from one of her friends that she was visiting fresh lettuce. They picked right then and there. I had 2 huge salads that night. It was amazing. I cannot tell you how much better I felt. I just noticed the difference. When we get store-bought stuff, who knows how long it's been sitting there. It doesn't have a lot of value left in it. So every time that you have the opportunity to plant any kind of food in your yard, you should be doing that. I don't care if it's one lettuce plant and you think, what's one lettuce plant going to do? You know what? It's going to do an entire meal for your family and actually give them nutrition and high quality. And hopefully you plant it in an area that you don't use any kind of chemicals on and don't spray your yard and what have you. I go out in the spring and every day I have a little grandpa's weed puller and I pull all the weeds I can find that have yellow flowers. I do it every day. I just stay up with it. In the fall, they do it again. They start popping out and they try to spread their seed. And every day I'm pulling all the yellow flowers. I don't use chemicals on my yard if I can help it. I just don't want to do that any more than I have to. They come around asking if I want to have my house sprayed on the outside for all spiders, bugs, and what have you. I don't. I want them there. I think, you know what? I'm going to be okay with a few spiders in my house. It's not a big deal. And so the more chemicals that we can remove from our environment, the better it is. And they tell me, hey, this is, it's totally biodegradable chemical. I'm like, you know what? I don't know what I can trust. I'm just going to say no. I'm really okay with the spiders. I've got 3 cats. They eat spiders. I don't even see them. So I don't really care. So, from that standpoint, it's a better way of living. So as we seek to detox the body, we want to do things that are going to be very liver supportive. And if you've read anything on detoxification, you've probably heard of like indole-3 carbonate and all these kinds of wild chemicals that help us detox and where they come from. And so cruciferous vegetables is a big deal. Broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, and the like. And so those things tend to be very good at holding on to chemicals in the gut and not allowing our gut to reabsorb them. We want those probably more organic than not. And I'll be coming out with lists of, the most pesticide foods on the planet. What vegetables do you want to stay away from, or what vegetables do you want to absolutely get organic? What others don't necessarily matter. I love that they spray hydrazine on potatoes so that the eyes don't grow. If any of you that are rocket scientists hear me just talk about hydrazine, your ears probably perked up because you're like, hey, that's rocket fuel. Yeah, it's a growth retardant. And so we're going to spray it on a potato so that it doesn't grow eyes, and then we're going to eat that potato, and it's a growth retardant. Let's give it to our children because it's a growth retardant. What do we think is going to happen to them? It is just insane what we allow people to do to food, and